spot where we're all able to meet. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out. All right, so the point of this meeting is to go over some of the confirm what RACI is responsible for and to set proper expectations for the team, because I know there's a lot of confusion about what are we supposed to be doing, what are informatics supposed to be doing, what are project teams supposed to be doing. And to be fair, it has changed multiple times. I think there's still a few gray areas that I know Karen is working to try and get clarity on. But does get difficult when you are at design meetings or even on site, and sometimes there's confusion about who's supposed to be responsible for what. Because a lot of it does become collaborative, but it is important to know who is ultimately responsible to make sure that things are getting delivered, things are getting validated. So I just want to run through the end-to-end clinic design process for CST, and we'll go over for each thing in step. And anything that anyone's not clear on, please interject at any point. Always happy to take questions whenever I'm doing any presentations. Okay, so HIM includes both us, RCQ, transcription, coding, records management, and registration. I always tell people is very vital because CST is encounter-based. Having accurate patient demographics and, more importantly, accurate appointments is very important, because this is what other teams are attaching their information to. We are essentially at the dependency for a lot of clinical work. So it's very key that our information is as accurate as possible and that there are no gaps in workflows, that nothing gets missed. Information that we collect also produces stats and reports, such as number of patients seen in a given period, length of stay, occupancy rate, and these are stats that get reported at operational level, organization-wide, and if we're talking about acute or emergency, this gets also reported to the provincial and federal levels, to CHI and ACRS. So our piece in this is making sure we're developing and monitoring the reg processes, policies, and standards to ensure that the data is as clean as possible, everyone is following correct workflows that don't impact downstreams in a negative way. We are supporting the sustainment and implementation of the system, data quality reporting and management, and training and education. This is a massive diagram I took off the interface team site, but the tiny red dot in the center, the CST Cerner, every other bubble is a downstream system. We are currently connected to about 52 different downstreams. So registration data flows out of the CST Cerner to a large number of places. As I was saying, reg is a dependency for many other clinical workflows. Accurate encounter strategies, med services, make sure that the right information is flowing to those other systems is very important for success for the patient experience. I always found this diagram really interesting, so a link is here as well if anyone wants to see it afterwards.
That was a diagram I think I included for the EMPI somehow, somewhere. Nice to see it still lives.
Yeah. I think this actually might be a little out of date. I think it was last updated October of last year, and I'm not sure if Flash is even on there yet. It might be one of the new tiny bubbles. So for the B18, specifically, what are we responsible for is reg and scheduling workflow support. This means requirement gathering, participating in design, gap analysis and validation sessions, system testing, end user support before, during, and after go live. This also includes assisting UR with making sure they have the right info they need for their training materials, and optimizing workflows, usually for sustainment. We're now also the clerical caliber strategy owners, and as part of our sustainment work, we also advise and support both user readiness and data quality activities. I know sustainment work, such as non-project questions from UR or data quality, can sometimes get overwhelming because so much of our time is taken up with CST project work. But one of the reasons why we are trying to expand the size of teams that we will have more capacity to devote to that time, because I know that sustainment work does usually involve well-core investigation. But specifically focusing on project for this meeting is CST clinic design. So site informatics leads the CST design sessions, and they own the overall workflow, but RCQ does own the registration and scheduling pieces. So we are not the builders. We have scheduling AAs for that. And I know these AAs and informatics folks will still lead a lot of the sessions, but we have to make sure that the parts that we're responsible for are getting validated correctly. So the expectation is that we are actively participating in every session. That means we are asking questions if there is stuff that's missing or unclear. If it's not being asked by the person leading the session, we do need to speak up and make sure it does get answered. So you have to drive that discussion when necessary. If there's any outstanding clerical design questions or anything's unclear, we do need to make sure we do follow up on that, either in the meeting or in a regular touch base, make sure that we do have a clear idea of what's required, what the clerical workflow is going to look like. Documentation of anything that's localized. This includes visual diagrams, this includes documents on Confluence. As we are confirming information, we have to make sure that that info is well documented, not just for us, but also for anyone in the project team. Every CST clinic has their own Confluence page with documents. Just because someone else uploads a document, you should always be able to go in and edit an existing document. If there's a slide deck that they're preparing, you can go in and edit that slide deck and just let them know afterwards, I've added so-and-so slides because I feel like we're missing this for the registration piece. We are working with informatics in these design sessions, but that means we still have to take some ownership of what is the registration scheduling items and make sure that they are included, and if they're not, add them in ourselves or make sure that they get added. Something new we're doing, starting with DGH and CW Cycle 2, is developing the clerical cutover strategy for ambulatory. This is something we've always done for acute, but ambulatory cutover development is new, which we'll expand on in future slides. And make sure that we are either creating or validating all of the other deliverables. Sort of things like clinic keys, SOPs, visual diagrams. I know often that informatics will just take the lead and start drafting these themselves, which is fine. If they've already created it, we cannot leave it there, though. We still have to go in and make sure this is validated, that nothing has been missed. Because we still ultimately own that piece at the end of the day. So if, say, informatics completes a full visual diagram that technically is fully read in Sketch, wonderful, very appreciative, but we still have to make sure we go in and validate it. Because if something is missing, if there is a gap, it will fall on us to fill it. And if we wait too long, it's going to create problems down the road.
Sorry, can I interject for 1 second? And you said it fabulously, but really to summarize, we are looked at as clerical SMEs, right? And in the past, it used to be like our office is still called registration standards, right? We're now called to be scheduling SMEs. And when we look at the workflows, we have to be the SMEs now for registration and scheduling. And that's to support the clerical staff, right? And that's the pieces that they touch. So when you look at Visios and stuff, and there's a workflow, with the clerical swim lane, we need to make sure that those clerical swim lanes are bang on. If there's like nuances from site to site, we need to understand what those nuances are. We need to be really understanding the clerical workflows better. We need to ask questions. We need to investigate. We need to develop those localized clerical workflows. Jump in if there's any questions. Jump in.
So looking at different phases of CST clinic design. There's pre-design, there's our design and build phase with our design validation meetings, there's SID testing. Afterwards, there's cutover planning and actual cutover execution, and then go live. And the sections in yellow are things that are primarily UR responsibilities that we still support, like PDP entry and developing workbooks, training of end users. So each of these we'll go over in a bit more detail. So pre-design always starts off with kickoff meetings with all of the assigned CIS and BA resources. This is led by informatics. So they will be getting those, they will send out those invites. They'll also be the ones who first contact the clinic, send out the basic questionnaires about their current state, and they'll also start following up on by email with the clinic for any unclear or missing responses to that questionnaire. I've always said that there's not much for us to do in pre-design, which is largely true, but there are a couple things we have to make sure we have done. So we want to make sure the CISs know what our role is during those sessions, that we are getting invited to everything that we need to in the future. They're having cases where we get invited to only some of the design sessions, but not all. So make sure we are clearly outlining what RCT BAs are responsible for and communicating that to informatics. Because if there's confusion on our side, there's 10 times as much confusion on the informatics side about who they should be inviting to what. Even with those clinic questionnaires, we still need to review them because yes, informatics is following up and trying to get clarity on anything that they're unsure about, but it is a mix of clerical and clinical info. If there's something that we still need to understand about current state, we still need to be involved somewhat in this process. Also, since we have everyone here, is everyone familiar with what these clinic questionnaires look like? Have you seen them before?
Yeah, I've seen them. They're usually on the Confluence page, attached on there.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's not on the Confluence page, I think I've seen some sites have a whole different section of Confluence for them, but there should be one for every single clinic. I believe they send them out and give the clinics roughly a month or so to reply. So the follow up and confirming any missing or unclear information is also part of the prep that they do for their first requirements gathering meeting during design and validation. So design validation, that I think makes up a large chunk of it. This is when we tend to get very bombarded with meeting invites because for every assigned clinic, you have multiple design validation sessions with SMEs. You have prep meetings for each of those. You have weekly touch bases with the team. So your calendar does fill up very quickly. What we're required to do. Oh,
sorry, and staff are also doing demos at these design and validation sessions as well?
Yes. Often demos do get done by Schedule A's or CIS, but if we're asked to do demos, it is something that we need to do as well.
Right, and at times we're also leading the whole design session and the validation.
We are for acute, which I have later on at the end.
Okay,
this
gotcha.
is strictly
Sorry
for now. So in design sessions, we are confirming the reg schedule workflows. So that means we have to make sure that there are no gaps in their present state, the future state. And again, like I said earlier, we're documenting and make sure that it is a solid reg schedule workflow, that we fully understand it. We have it documented clearly. That includes things like local Visio diagrams. If there needs to be EDD tickets for something like a clinic asking to use recurring, but they don't meet our criteria. If they need some sort of design or build change to the system. If there are reg-related EDDs or JIRA tickets required, we have to make sure we are still helping push those forward. And of course, validate future build requirements like encounter strategy, med service, doc routing. Do they need any new reports, which again would be more JIRA tickets. And this is the part that we have to make sure we are very engaged with, because if something gets missed at this point, trying to catch up at the end of design or even after training's begun does get very difficult. So again, I want to reiterate, make sure that you are really solid on your assigned clinics as much as possible. I know asking to be hyper engaged in the meeting is really difficult when there's so much going on. It gets very tempting to multitask. I've been multitasking all morning myself, but I will say if you are busy with other things that prevent you from really giving a lot of focus to something, please let me and Sarah know, because if there's something else you're working on the side, we will try and get someone else to assist. We want to make sure that you have capacity, and if not, we'll try and create that capacity or see where we can. Next up, after design build is complete, there is system integrated testing. Again, led by informatics, but they will ask us to review their test narratives, update them as necessary. These are, again, written by clinical folks, so their knowledge of the reg steps in detail are often very fuzzy. So it is important that we do review the narratives, and then when they do send out scripts, that we are filling in any missing reg sketch steps. And during the actual testing, we are participating and helping execute those steps. And if you have done SID testing before, there's one round of SID testing for each wave. It's not clinic by clinic. It does include acute, ambulatory, and several other workflows. Depending on the size of the site, size of the wave, it could be 1 or 2 days. It could be almost a full week of SID testing. Next is PDP entry and workbook creation. We have done PDP entry in the past for the last wave, but this is something that is owned by the user readiness team and is going back to the user readiness team in the future. For everyone who's helped with in the past, again, thank you, because although the UR team was new at the time, they couldn't handle the additional tasks because there's tight deadlines on it. But going forward, the only thing BAs will have to do is make sure we compile all the necessary information, which you should be collecting during those design validation sessions in advance, and handing over everything that they need for these PDP entries for their learning materials. A lot of that is making sure that UR knows what is the workflow for a given clinic very thoroughly. Not just for PDPs, but for workbooks, they have to understand what does each clerk have to do start to finish. They need to have a very clear idea of how that clinic actually is going to function in CST so they can structure their training accordingly. Which means we also need to know how that clinic is going to work backwards and forwards. And then cutover planning, which I know most of us are knee-deep in right now. So previously, we only participated in cutover as a support role, where we would just help with on-site support. But starting with these current waves, we are now the clerical strategy owners, meaning we now own the reg sketch elements of each cutover strategy. These are usually a mix of clerical and clinical, so this is still collaborative with informatics. But anything that's reg sketch related, like what elements are in scope, sources of truth, what the delta strategy is going to be, timelines and how many resources we need, IMITS extracts, that's stuff that we now have to coordinate. For extracts, if it is, say, PCIS, their main registration system, there's going to be one large extract for each site, so it's not clinic by clinic. But many clinics do use private EMRs, so you would have to then coordinate with informatics and operations, and those operations managers will have to try and get info out of those private EMRs. Sometimes they can get extracts, sometimes people are relying on reports. Private EMRs are always different, but that is part of confirming our sources of truth for each element of cutover. How are we actually going to get the info we need? What is that cover process actually going to look like? As part of cover planning, we do have to present our cover strategies for endorsement to several different groups. There's one cross-team impact meeting where we're just presenting to other CST teams. There's a CST manager endorsement meeting. Then there's the final operations summary and final endorsement. The cover strategy should largely be finished before that first cross-team meeting. Sometimes there's a few minor outstanding questions, but that means when we're drafting strategy, we've already contacted the site. We've understand exactly what is their current state, and we know what needs to get cut over into CST Cerner to ensure that they have continuous service and that all the food that they need is there. And again, for material development, we are ultimately responsible for orientation materials, cutover SOPs, and providing on-site support during cutover. For those of you who are doing cutover now, like Flo and the others, anything else you want to add to this?
Hey, Danica here. I do have a question. I know it says that it's a collaborative effort between the CIS and RCQ when it's this clinical and clerical data that's being cut over. However, a lot of my clinics are clerical only, and on the JIRA ticket, it does state that it is RCQ that's leading the entire thing. So I'm not entirely sure what that would look like. Because for the ones where it does have, like the clinical pieces are being cut over, as well as the CISs that are like booking these meetings and me and all that. But what about for the clerical only? Will they still be involved, and what would their involvement look like in those in that scenario?
No, it's a great question. Involvement, if it's clerical only, it's going to be really small on their side. There still has to be a couple slides in your slide deck that just clearly state that there are no clinical components, that it is reg only. But you're right, if it is solely reg and sketch, there's nothing clinical, we are going to have to lead a lot of the meetings with this site to confirm the information. CISs are still going to be very familiar with the clinic. You can still ask them questions and use them as a source of information. But rather than have them lead and facilitate most meetings, we will have to take more of a lead position ourselves for those. But you don't have to do it in a vacuum, because the same CISs have been assigned to these clinics during design for months now. So they're a fantastic resource that you can also use to confirm information. Sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I have one more thing, sorry, Abe, to go over for the cutover.
Mhm.
Because me and Kimia just had a meeting with Celia, because she had to go over some more cutover with us, and she mentioned that something that will be passed over to me and Kimia when Surrey happens is that she's also managing some of the a weekly list for like once cutover starts. So basically, once cutover starts, she's been working the past due arrivals work list weekly for all the cutover clinics that we do, as well as also running a report on discern, which is the possible duplicate encounters. So that's another thing that we would have to add on to our cutover workload.
Yes, and I didn't go into detail about the on-site support during cutover, but ensuring that you are doing quality checks, that staff haven't missed anything, depending on how the cover is being done, because usually it's one-to-one, one clinic, one strategy. I know BC Cancer is a little unique in that they have shared resources doing all clinics, and they're just switching from one to the next. But when you are doing cover support, there is some DQ checks we ask everyone to do, either CIS or RCQ supports in person, to make sure that everything has been completed, the right number of appointments have been cut over. I believe, at least on the VGH side, there's a really good template that's even mentioned. These are the type of reports you should be running, at least for the appointments, to confirm that everything is complete, that the numbers that Catherine is reporting out are actually accurate. Because if they're simply relying on spreadsheets that staff are filling in, sometimes staff might mistakenly mark a role as complete when it isn't. So ensuring that nothing has been missed, helping with that final quality control check during, and especially at the end of cutover, is a large part of our on-site support. I think we can also, in the future, get a more detailed list of what you should be checking during on-site cutover support. Is
She
going to vary a
offered,
little bit for clinic to clinic. Sorry, from clinic to clinic and even
No.
site to site, because everyone does cutover a little bit differently.
she offered to meet up with you, Sarah, if possible, Karen as well, to kind of like go through over the details that we usually do for BC Cancer, since it's a bit like more, I don't know, like different and a bit unique to any other hospital. So I'll like email and I'll CC everyone, so we
And I
can arrange
think
that.
her concern is that because cutover happened at the same time as workflow sessions, and me and Kimmy have been dragged for the workbook session, that what's it called, that
Chelsea, you're mute.
sorry. Sorry, but yeah, that me and her have been dragged, or not, sorry, have been pulled in to the sessions where we haven't been able to help much with the cutover. So I think her concern was the timeline of this. Is this gonna happen again for Surrey, where if a workbook and cutover is happening again, will we be pulled? And then especially if she's not getting involved too much now for the next next BC Cancer activations for Surrey and Kelowna and Victoria.
This is Celia, right? Discussions with Celia.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I do need to I connected with Rosween yesterday, but I will make sure that I do connect with Celia. Because I asked, like, how are we doing? How are we supporting from a registration perspective? And I understood everything was good, but I thank you for flagging that for me. I definitely will connect and make sure that we're understanding and that consequently, that we're factoring in those expectations and that Abraham is going to really help really understand that and monitor and support that too as we move forward. Thank you for that feedback. Wonderful.
Yeah, adding to the parking lot. So we'll make sure that it's also well documented in the future, so everyone knows, not just for Surrey, but these are the reports that you should be running. This is what you should be validating when they're on site. Beyond just the end user, how do I do so-and-so question, ensuring that everything is getting cut over successfully and that nothing is getting missed during that process. So no, it's a good suggestion. We'll make sure that is available for everyone in the future. Thank you. Anything else for cover planning? I know this is a hot topic recently.
Are we coming up with a way that kind of switch from Slack to something else? Like, is there gonna be another thing? I know like this is not like really specific to BAs, but I'm just wondering, how are we gonna communicate? Like, do we have to come up with the ways, or it's gonna be something like decided with the whole like CSD team and we'll like switch to another app?
Teams is a new app. So on the VCH side, they had a really good orientation session for the switch from Slack to Teams, how they're organizing multiple channels. I know at BC Cancer, it was less structured. They just had 1 or 2 channels where everything got put into it. But the way that they are organizing in teams for VCH is much more organized. They have essentially groups and teams that are divided into subgroups, which act just like the old channels in Slack did, where you can post a question, then reply to that question, so the whole channel isn't filling up with a discussion or investigation. So it's expected that other health authorities would follow the same strategy. If you haven't seen the VCH orientation slide deck, I think I sent it out to all the BAs assigned to VC Vancouver General, but I can send it out to the entire team as well.
Okay,
I think I sent the invite to the entire team, but it is a good one, and they have a very clear slide deck about how it's structured and what their plan is going forward.
Sorry, Abraham, I was going to say there's also some questions in the chat or comments. David is saying that more details about Delta management would be appreciated. So we play a big role in Delta management and figuring out what that is going to look like. And we need to collaborate with the CISs, right? So the BAs do need to, that's a good call out, and we need to understand that process and make sure that we have the right support for you guys. And if you need to be meeting with folks, how does the CIS help you to? So I think we'll flag that and just make sure that we're supporting you guys in that process, because the expectation is that we need to make sure that that cutover, that Delta management is going to be smooth.
Yeah, Deepa here. I think for CW, it's a little bit easier just because everyone uses like legacy system CW.
Yeah.
And they even pull like a delta. You have a separate extract for the deltas. So that's a little bit easier. But I think for the other sites, since we have so many different systems and so many different sources of truth, delta management might get a little bit more complex.
Yeah, that's true. Delta management really depends on what your sources of truth are and how often they get updated. Because appointments are always going to get changed in the future, but if they have a large wait list that's solely on paper, how often do they get through that? How many of those get switched from waitlisted or pending triage to new appointments? You're right, it does depend. It is different in each case, and a lot of it does depend on source of truth. But again, we are supporting cutover. I'm sending out invites for touch-based meetings with each team to largely go over cover strategies and make sure learning materials are getting communicated to UR. So I know it's a bit late for CW cycle 2, but for CW cycle 4, which I think you're next assigned to Deepa, you will always have me as a resource. You can also discuss each cover strategy and make sure everything is accounted for, including Delta. But I know this first round of cover planning has been a little rough because all of us were kind of thrown into it. But future cycles, much more support is already being put into place for it. And I think I saw one more thing from Flo about ensuring badges work before cutover. Sorry, Flo, do you have badge issues today at VGH?
Yes, actually, me and B are unable to open the doors, and this is important, especially if you're working for a clinic that has a lot of paper charts dispersed across an entire floor. And this is the third day when my badge is not working, and I was told it's gonna take a few days, and it's important, right, that it works before and not after cutover.
Right. And you know what? That's a great call out. Thank you. And if we're not doing that well enough in advance, we will start putting that into our little project planning. Like, cause that, I mean, the project planning team does do that. So if we've missed that part and getting you guys, making sure you have the access, we will flag that for ourselves. Thank you.
All right, moving on from cutover. Go live support. We've all done this multiple times now, but in-person user support that we do together with user readiness. One piece that I think mainly Chelsea has done is update and monitor a work in progress tracker, which looks at changes over time for multiple work lists and request lists to make sure things are getting actioned. Clerks are checking all the lists that they need to. Chelsea is something you and I have to connect on later, but I believe you trained, I think, Yan and one other BA on how and Victor, thank you. For the other streams, because I don't want, part of how we reassign people individual streams, we do want to have one person for each stream trained on how to do this so that everyone can just focus on their own stream, that you're not working with conflicting deadlines. I think for future streams, we're going to make sure that knowledge transfer happens from Chelsea to other BAs. Also during Go Live, make sure that we are resolving any workflow gaps that may have slipped through design. Sometimes things just don't get mentioned by SMEs, or when you're on site, you know something very odd that may not have been accounted for in those sessions. So we are making sure that workflows are solid, everything has been accounted for, actually seeing them run in person, and they are sufficient. And also working with informatics or build teams to investigate and resolve any technical issues. This could be anything from missing core locations, wrong filtering of medical services. Maybe they want to change their medical service at the last minute. All these tend to pop up. To be fair, most of this tends to just be printer problems. I think half the questions I get during Go Live are printer related, but we are also there to help investigate since we are in person and work with appropriate teams to resolve. I think Karen's favorite phrase around Go Live support, that is very much all hands on deck, because they are large sites. In previous Go Lives, we have pulled people from other streams to get more bodies at each site, but going forward, we realize that's not sustainable because it does hurt the other stream, especially since there's so many happening at the same time this year. So whoever is assigned to a stream, we've told the site that that is how many people they're getting for in-person support, and they should be making up the difference with more peer mentors. So there are going to be less RCQ faces at each Go Live. part how we've tried to mitigate this, say for cutovers, ask them to consolidate into the same building or to the same room as much as possible. But in-person Go Live support should be more peer mentors in the future. Fortunately, it does mean a bit more roaming, but on the bright side for everyone, and yourselves included, you're not getting pulled away from your own stream to work on something or be asked to go on site when you have other deliverables for other hospitals. So we don't want to repeat of what happened at UBC, where everyone was scrambling to finish Abbotsford materials at the same time. Yeah. And then moving on to acute design and cutover. It's largely the same as where we are determining requirements, investigating what needs to be changed, if any. But the key difference between acute and ambulatory design is that RCQ really owns and leads all of this. So we hold about 6 to 7 acute CEC registration sessions. These are for things like the inpatient, all the inpatient units, long-term care, and PMH, ED. There's a a finance overview, data quality overview, a downtime overview session. These are solely led and organized by our team. I think the last ones we've done were for Richmond, which Tutu and Danica led. I think the last one just finished up last week, actually. So again, thanks, guys. But for acute design for registration, that is solely on us. It has always been us for ages, I think going back to at least Seashell, if not earlier. And we also own the encounter cutover strategy for everyone who's in-house. So there's anyone who's currently in the room or bed, our ED patients, and often the encounters for the surgery wait list, which means we have to request and organize extracts, develop the strategy, determine timelines and elements in scope, like we do with our clinic strategies. And something that is different is also the collaborate with other strategy owners, namely clinical, that are dependent on reg cutover being done. Acute cutover typically happens in a single day for everyone who's in-house, so that timeline has to be confirmed down to the hour. And if there is a brand new legacy system that we've never used before, for example, PCIS was the first PCIS site. Sorry, the first PCIS site that went live on CST was VGH. So at that time, we had to organize a patient data load and make sure we're cleaning up thin data as much as possible to load patient MRNs from the old system to the new. I think the last one we did was for forensic Cerner. I think there's only one more for the Powell Rivers still on McKesson. But for any new acute site, this is activity that we've always done. I think I personally just been the acute strategy owner for the last 4 sites, but this is something I will make sure other BAs know how to do and are able to support in the future. Double checking questions for chat.
I think you might want to leave B's question. It might be more relevant to address later. Thank you.
Yeah. Opening up for questions from the team. When you have been in design sessions or in cover planning, has there been any confusion about who owns what piece and what needs to get validated by whom? Is there any part of the process where our role isn't clear? Because I do want you all to be able to go out of this meeting with a clear understanding of what we're responsible for and be able to communicate that to informatics in future cycles.
So let me jump in for a second, and then I'll try to keep it short. You guys are a critical part to the success of these implementations. You play a big role, and our senior staff, they're really, great and they know the stuff and they're doing, but our junior staff, we want to mentor you. You're just stepping in and as a leadership team, we're going to do that better. Okay. But there is ambiguity right now. I don't think everyone clearly understands the roles. And we will work with you guys. We're going to set up the right structure to support that. But you guys need to know, you need to be engaged at the meetings. You are the clerical subject matter experts. And you have a responsibility of owning that piece of it and understanding it well so that the implementations are successful. Abraham is going to really mentor and keep a track. He will be having I know he's already having meetings with you guys. I communicated that out previously. As a leadership team, we will be working with you. You guys need to come to those meetings prepared so that Abraham, you can voice concerns. Oh, I'm on this pain clinic and I still don't know. And, here's where I'm at. You guys need to report out clinic by clinic, the progress. Where's pain points where Abraham can help you, remove that and move things forward. But you have a big role to play. I want you guys to, voice any questions you have right now. And if there's more questions you think of later, don't ever hesitate. But I do know that you're going to have better support available to you as we move forward to really mentor you through to make sure that you guys are the subject matter experts and doing that role. And you are engaged at those sessions. You are talking. You're not just listening. You are extracting the information you need because it's critical to the implementation process.
And also that if you need support, if you are feeling that there is too much on your plate, please reach out and let me know, because I can try and find capacity. I can try and get someone else to help or try and take something off your plate if it's not critical, or help reprioritize. So if there is a lot going on, please don't just try and muscle through it. Reach out. Happy to try and help, because I don't want it should not be that difficult on your end. We're trying to make it set you up for success as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you guys a brief update on BC Cancer implementation for Abbotsford. BC Cancer is our most unique site. And those implementations, I think, have always been very difficult for CST overall, right? Vancouver, the clerical staff really struggled with it. Prince George, I think it was a bit better. Abbotsford, I think because they felt like, this is not going well for our clerical staff, we're going to really push and make sure that doesn't happen at Abbotsford. There was a very, there were, expectations from the site, which rightfully they have a right to deserve, to expect excellence from us, and they deserve it, right? But that overall process, we didn't do as well as we could have as a leadership team. Maybe we didn't support you guys well enough. We do have some part, like there was some findings from that BC Cancer, analysis piece. And so, I don't want to minimize your guys' work. You guys are doing a great job, but you guys do have a big role to play. Registration tends to be our jam, right? And then scheduling is fairly new, and especially at BC Cancer, very complex. So consequently, I am meeting with the leadership team. I do need to work out that RACI and really understand it, because I think there's nuances to that RACI that I don't know if you know about that RACI document, but it's this big spreadsheet of tasks that CST had transitioned over to us. And I think there's additional things that have been missed or nuances to it that we really need to drive out. I will be doing that. And then Abraham and I and Sarah, we are going to be making sure that we are very aware of what our expectations are and monitoring it better as we move forward and supporting you guys better. That's just a little bit I'll add about BC Cancer. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
I agree with what B wrote, that we should be involved from the beginning in conversations with the clinical informatics and with the site as well. It doesn't help for us to come and do cutover when people actually don't know us, and we have to introduce ourselves over and over again, and they don't know what our duties and responsibilities are. They're all very familiar with the informatics team, but not with us, and we are strategy owners now, so we should be introduced to the clinic and to the staff from the beginning.
Okay, that's really good feedback, Flo.
And also,
Thank you.
I think it would help if we do site visits and kind of get an idea of how much they're paper-based, what type of information systems they have, what applications they use, where things are in the clinics as well. So site visits would help too, in my opinion.
Okay, no, that's fabulous feedback. I think some of that flow, just so you know, I think it happens in pre-design activities. And either we need access to pre-design activities or you guys need to participate in the pre-design activities. And so thank you for that feedback. It's really valuable. And so let me take that away with Abraham and Sarah, and that'll be on our radar. Sarah, are you taking notes on this? Sorry. Just action items for us. Thank you. Great feedback. Okay. Just trying to read the chat, but I think that was B's last point is what you're bringing up. Excellent. Yeah. And anything else you guys have, especially my senior BAs, but also to the junior ones, like you just don't hesitate. Send us an email, because we need to work through some of this stuff. And, we're becoming the owners, we're becoming the project team. Like CST is going to go away at the end of July of this year, right? And so we want to make sure that if there's pain points, we got to work through them with you, and you need to let us know what they are, and we will do that. We're committed. So just don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your lunchtime. We just needed all of you guys to participate in this meeting. I encourage you. I know that Abraham will make his presentation available to you. This is not the last of the meetings by any means, but I think we wanted to deliver a consistent message to all of you guys together. I encourage you to review the presentation. Any questions you have, you guys deserve clarity from us. And so if there's anything that is confusing and you're not understanding, then just give a shout out. Thank you. Anything else?
Hi, Karen. I just wanted to mention that for CW in particular, like we were told like these are going to be all our responsibilities. These are our deliverables. This is like from the RACI document from like way back when before we were consulted. And I think it was helpful like when we met with the site itself, like just to go over the responsibilities and what they're going to support with, and just the extent of the collaborative effort, like how much, like where they're going to collaborate and whatnot. I think doing that with each site will be helpful as well. CW had a similar meeting with us, and it was very helpful.
Yeah, agreed. So what I'm hearing you say really is, I think it speaks to Flo's earlier point too around CIS collaboration, right? That you guys need to be collaborating with those CISs to really understand, hey, here's what I'm going to be doing, and here's what you're going to be doing, and here's how we're going to work together and support one another, and it's a partnership. And you're right. We want to do that. And so thank you for flagging it. I agree. If we need to be figuring out a better way to incorporate that, we need to do that. And that might be those pre-design activities, but for sure, I know it's on Abraham's radar already. He's talked about ensuring that we have greater collaboration between you and the CIS. It totally is a valid point. And then, there is the other part of this I will add, Deepa, is the site itself also has some responsibilities. Like the CIS is the site, but still there's other responsibilities that sit out of the CIS role and our role and what the site has. And we're trying to drive that out better too, because that was a bit of a learning curve for us at BC Cancer. So definitely, I am working behind the scenes with Abraham and Sarah to really drive more clarity and then bring that clarity to you guys as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for all of the work you guys are doing. I don't want you, like, you guys are doing a great work and you are working your butts off in an aggressive, pressurized environment. And kudos to you for being professionals and, being engaged and carrying the important role that you guys, carry. So, I just really want to shout out and give you guys a thank you for everything that you guys do to support the organizations and us and, bring your best forward. So thank you for that. Fantastic. Okay, go eat off the side of your desk now before we head off to our next meeting. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Abraham, I'll let you end it.
Okay. Thanks again, everyone. I am sending out invites for smaller touch-based meetings with BAs and URs assigned to each stream. I think I already sent one out for Richmond, so our first one's on Friday. Invites for the other streams will be going out this week. For those of you who are on site, for example, Flow, you can ignore the Richmond invites while you're there, since we have Ken and Tutu covering for you. For others who are on site, not a big concern. If there are questions from the UR, I'll make sure to bring them to you afterwards. But this is just to ensure that we have a structure in place where there are any questions, you can bring them to us, any concerns, and make sure that you are getting supported as we develop and move forward with other streams. So rather than have one large group meeting, it's going to be multiple smaller meetings that we can really focus on issues or blockages and help you work through them.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. See
right,
all of
thank
you.
Thank you for
In the
the
next meeting.
presentation, Abe. Great job.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. Thanks, everyone.